All right. Well, hi there and welcome back to my channel. If you're coming here to learn about product marketing and how to ace your product marketing interviews and break into the role, you've come to the right place. I'm really excited to do a slightly different video format from my usual content on my channel. I'm here with the wonderful, talented, exceptionally great product marketing leader, Jodi Innerfield. We're going to be talking today about what hiring managers look for on a product marketing interview and what you can do to stand out and then what you can do to prepare better. So Jodi, again, I'm so excited to have you here today. And thank you so much for joining and giving us your perspective. I'd like to kick things off with just a quick introduction. I know that a lot of folks on my channel and that I've spoken to, they don't have a super linear path to product marketing. And from what I remember, that sounds very similar to your experience. So I'd love to learn, how did you break into product marketing? And just a quick intro, we can dive into some questions.
Thank you so much for having me. I did not start my career in product marketing. I don't think many people do. I started my undergrad was in psychology. My first job was in film production. Then I was in human resources. And then I went to business school initially to transition into human capital consulting. And then I very quickly realized that consulting would mean that I wouldn't be able to sleep in my own bed. And I wanted to get a dog. So that was not going to be life for me. So I pivoted really quickly at business school. I went to Michigan, go blue, and had to really think about what did I want to do. And while I was in HR, I was the HR business partner for the tech and product organization. So I was familiar with, product management. I sat across from our marketing team. So I knew a little bit about product management, a little bit about product marketing, and just had a bunch of conversations to actually learn more about what are these roles. It's really, if you're not exposed to them, it's really hard to understand what is product marketing, what is product management. You don't go to college for these things. Not even grad school teaches you what these are necessarily. So just a lot of conversations with people. And then when I graduated from business school, I broke into product marketing. I'm happy to, talk a little bit about that. It was not necessarily easy to go from HR to product marketing, but it can certainly be done. And I've been in product marketing ever since.
The reason why I love to kick things off with that question is just, as I said, there's so many folks out there that might be in management consulting like you were, or they might be in a customer-facing role like sales or customer success, but they're starting to stumble upon, maybe they're attending marketing meetings and they're learning about product marketing. And they're like, wow, I never even knew that this existed. Like, how do I break in? It can seem so overwhelming to try to figure out how do I translate my experience into relevant product marketing skills. And it's definitely, like you said, it's definitely doable. And I'm really excited to ask some questions with that in mind, because I know that there's a lot of folks who watch my channel or talk to me on one-on-one calls that are really looking to understand what a hiring manager is really looking at. I'm answering my questions on my interview and I'm trying to spin my experience to be relevant. But what are the things that, a hiring manager is really knocking me on or is really saying, hey, this is a great candidate, let's move forward. So I have a list of questions, as I said today, that we're going to go through. So if you're watching, please take out your notebook, take down some notes. We're going to learn a lot about what a great product marketing manager and a great product marketing hiring manager looks for in a candidate. So my first question is just, what is the most common mistake that you see PMM candidates make?
I think that the mistake that I see is tied to the thing that I think is most important in a product marketer, which is storytelling. I think storytelling is the number one skill set that a product marketer needs to have. And the number one mistake I see product marketers make is not treating their interview as an opportunity to showcase their storytelling skills. So especially if you are a career changer or if you don't come from product marketing, you get to tell that story. You're the one that gets to make it make sense and talk about your transferable skills and what you've learned and how what you've done previously has the same tenets as product marketing. And you get to say why you're a fit for the role. And you get to do it in the form of a story. And you get to pitch yourself as the product. So the number one mistake is not looking at yourself as the thing that you are pitching and not treating this as an opportunity to showcase your storytelling skills.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I've made that mistake, early on when I was trying to break into the role. And it's really easy to get into kind of a negative space in that conversation, because then you start going through, well, why did you leave that company? And well, you're actually in this role right now, instead of creating a cohesive story and really pitching yourself is very, very different. It lands very differently. It's much more impactful.
Yeah. And I think especially as a product marketer, our job is storytelling. And so if you can't tell your own story, how are you going to tell the story of a product that you have to learn? So that's definitely the number one thing that I look for is, the storytelling skills and how that comes through within the interview itself.
Absolutely. And then my next question is kind of related to that. It just, what makes a PMM candidate maybe a front runner or an obvious choice for a role in your mind?
Yeah. Well, we already talked about storytelling. That's fairly number one. I think that it's our job as a marketer to help a customer or a salesperson understand why this product or the solution solves their problems. And we do that in the form of stories. Stories are, one of the most effective way of getting people to engage and listen and pay attention. So storytelling, number one. I think the second is adaptability. Everything changes just so quickly. As I mentioned, there's obviously like macroeconomic trends that, lead to changes in maybe your product strategy or marketing strategy. There's also just changes within an organization, and what you were hired to do might not be what you continue to do. Being adaptable is so important because you can't be stuck in your ways, both in terms of the work that you're doing, but also in terms of the prioritization, in terms of the projects that you're working on. You have to be ready to pivot. So that's the second thing I look for. And the third is collaboration. Being a product marketer is a team sport. You are working, there's almost nothing that you do completely on your own.
Absolutely.
Even if you are writing messaging, right? Messaging is very much a product marketer's job. But in order to write that messaging, I need to talk to the product team, maybe the engineering team. I need to talk to customers. I need to talk to sales. I have to get inputs from all of these different stakeholders, and I have to get feedback from all of those different stakeholders. So the ability to identify who you need to collaborate with, who you need to get feedback from, and to prioritize amongst all of those different stakeholders is so important for a product marketer's success.
Absolutely. And it's so challenging. I know we talked about that previously, just how hard it is to weigh people's feedback, in that huge group that's reviewing your messaging, for example. I think your point about adaptability is so great. I'm really happy that you mentioned that. I feel like I talk about that a lot on my channel, that you can take all these certifications, you can take all these courses and read all these books that people recommend, buyer personas or product marketing alliance. And they'll tell you, okay, you start here, you look at your competitors, and then it's like this nice linear path. And
I don't think I've ever had a linear path to a product launch ever. I don't think I've ever had enough time to have a linear path to a launch. Everything just, you gotta pull something together really quickly, and you have to, be really scrappy. And there's just those, I think those frameworks exist so that you have some context. Those processes exist so in an ideal world, here's what you would do. But the reality is we don't live in an ideal world. And so how do you adapt and figure out really quickly what you need to do and what you can skip?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think especially for someone that, might be coming into their first product marketing role, maybe they did take these courses, maybe they tried to prep, and they finally landed their first product marketing role from a different role. And I think it can be kind of jarring for a new person. It's like, wait, we're just going to launch, but we haven't done any buyer interviews, and some companies don't even have a beta program, and they're just launching things so quickly that I think it can be really surprising. But that's, again, another point, that just being adaptable, being open, and having that kind of like roll with the punches.
Yeah.
You got to do what you have to do. It's really going to help like people go far in your product marketing career and really any career, honestly.
I feel like a lot of this is just general. It's not necessarily specific to product marketing.
For sure. Or can you tell me what is the best answer you've ever heard on a PMM interview? Maybe a question and answer?
Ooh, it's so funny because I don't know that I would say that the best or most memorable answer I heard, again, even has to do with product marketing. But the question I ask is, what's the last thing you went on like an internet rabbit hole down, or what's the last thing you kind of like?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And the reason I ask it is I want to know that you have the ability to just like dive into something from scratch and learn, that you have a curiosity, that you have the ability to go figure something out on your own. I think one of my greatest skills is just that I'm really good at Googling and just finding information. Maybe it's not Google, but like I can just find information on what I need, whether that's because I know who to talk to, or I know, where to look, or I know what search terms to use. So I asked this question just to kind of get at that. Like, is someone just able to figure things out on their own, and are they innately curious?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, the answer doesn't nail, but enthusiasm more the answer. And what kind of, what thing they tell me. So the one that I remember is someone telling me, this was years and years ago. This must have been 2017, 2018, whenever Meghan Markle and Prince Harry got married, because that's about the royal family and the royal wedding. And just all the different things. She went down this rabbit hole, and then she wanted to know about this and then about that. And again, it was memorable, not just because I too go down the royal family rabbit hole, but because I could see this person's enthusiasm. I could see this person's curiosity. I could see that if I gave them a project that they didn't know where to start, that they would just go figure it out. And that's, I think, that's something I need on my team. I always want to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people who I don't have to tell them how to do the work or how to get the answer. I can say like, hey, how do we do this? And they're like, okay, you know what? I don't know where to start, but I'll just go figure out something, and I'll start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. That resourcefulness.
Yeah, resourcefulness, curiosity.
Yeah. I also think in a way it kind of shows passion.
Absolutely.
And I think
that's the other question. I remember one of my first jobs that I interviewed for in HR. Somebody asked me, like, what are you passionate about? And I remember, like, that's a weird question. Why are you asking me that? And then when I got the job, I asked her, I was like, why do you ask this question? She's like, oh, because I want to know that somebody has a passion. Like, if you have the ability to have a passion for something and you can talk about it enthusiastically and excitedly, like, I could tell you to go figure something out, and you'll go search, you'll go figure it out. Like, you will have interest. You won't be apathetic.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's like, that's a great way to stand out on your interview, is just showing that you have a passion, that you can light up and you can speak passionately. Like,
Absolutely.
people pay attention, right? And when you're delivering something, let's say you're delivering a sales training, you might not be, gung-ho about the content, but the fact that you can speak passionately,
it's memorable.
Exactly. It gets people to remember and kind of get their ears perked up and listen to you.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. And so my next question is just, what are some of the soft or hard skills that you think are essential for PMM and that just aren't talked about enough?
I feel bad because I feel like all the answers I'm giving aren't like necessarily specific to PMM, but the reality is you can learn the hard skills of PMM. Messaging and positioning can be taught. Buyer personas, how to build a buyer persona, how to do competitive analysis, how to build a launch plan. Like, if you're, again, curious, adaptable, resourceful, like, you can learn all those things. I think the soft skills are a lot harder to teach, just in general in life. Leading without authority, I think, is a really hard one, and that's very common for product marketers. I think it depends upon the organization. In some organizations, product marketing is seen as the center of bringing together product and sales and engineering and all these teams. At others, it's not. At others, maybe they're more product and engineering-led organizations, and product marketing is kind of fighting for space and time and resources. regardless, PMMs, again, if I go back to the need to collaborate and all the different stakeholders that you have, you're always trying to influence and lead a project or a program where you don't necessarily have formal authority, especially when you're more junior. You know, you might be leading a launch and you have to bring in your product managers and your campaigns team and enablement and events and all of these people, but you might be one of the more junior people in the room. So how do you get consensus? How do you get buy-in? How do you make sure people feel bought in? And how do you make sure that you come across with the confidence and the knowledge to be seen as the leader without coming across as cocky? That's a very it's very difficult. I think that it can be very uncomfortable for people. I think on that note, the other soft skill that I think is hard for people is kind of tooting your own horn and showcasing your accomplishments. That can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people because it can come across as inauthentic to say, like, look how great I am. Look at all these cool things I just did. But there is a way to position your success or your team's success without coming across as look at me, look at me. You can position them as learnings. You can celebrate the work of other people on the team. But I think, leading without authority or influencing without authority and then like showcasing and celebrating successes are two very important skill sets that every PMM needs to have in order to be successful.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially about the, kind of tooting your own horn and doing that in a, authentic and I guess in a classy way, for lack of a better word. It's tough, but it's really important because oftentimes our work is really difficult to tie back, and attribute to a certain metric, like to say, okay, we did this launch and this generated this much revenue. Like, it's tough to do that. So it's important and
I think there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that you also want to showcase what went into something. And you also, as a product marketer, you want to be tied to success metrics. And the only way to showcase that is to showcase the work that you did and the success metrics that came of the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. My next question is kind of related to what we talked about at the top of this conversation, which is what can someone do who doesn't maybe have direct PMM experience? What can they do to get their first product marketing role in today's market? Is it possible?
Oh, it's definitely possible. I mean, I'll share what I did, which is as I mentioned, came from human resources and I had a hard time finding my first product marketing role. The way that I tried to get around it was to pitch myself and apply for product marketing roles in HR tech. So that's my best advice is figure out, is there an industry that you are already in? Can you position yourself within an existing industry? Is there a role or an industry where you are already the buyer? So in my instance, I had purchased HR tech before. I knew that space because I was in that world. And so as a product marketer, I already knew the industry. I knew the buyer. I knew the competitive landscape. That's half the battle. I had to learn the hard skills of how to be a PMM. What is messaging and positioning? How do I build a first call deck? But again, like those are teachable. Everything is teachable, but it made it so that the transition was easier. It was easier for the hiring manager to see how I would add value on day one. I would add value from my industry expertise, even if they had to take a chance on teaching me the marketing side of things. I also think the other very important thing is to figure out what transferable skills you do have and how to pitch those as product marketing. So for example, if you're in sales, you can build presentations, you can tell stories, you can handle customer objections. If you're a solutions engineer, you can build demos. You understand how to teach a salesperson. There's always something that is transferable. You just have to, again, going back to the mistake people make is you have to tell the story. You have to connect the dots for people, both on your resume and in your interview, as to why your skill set is directly transferable to product marketing. You can't wait for somebody else to connect the dots. You have to connect the dots for them.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think sometimes it can be difficult we kind of want someone to just tell us, hey, here's my resume, tell me how I should pitch myself.
No,
but at the end of the day, It's like you have to think back at those examples. Like we're talking about leading without authority and how that's really challenging. Like, okay, well, how have I built relationships in my current role that's really helped me to, execute a certain part of a launch or, complete this project or something. It's like trying to find those instances and those projects or experiences. Like no one's going to be able to ask you that. Like you're going to have to think to yourself, look back. So I totally agree. The storytelling is absolutely key. Can you tell me a little bit more about take-home assignments? So I hear this from a lot of folks that they're getting asked to do these crazy take-home assignments. And I'm just kind of curious, what are the most common take-home assignments that maybe you've sent candidates to complete? What were you looking for? Just tell me a little bit more about that part of the interview process.
Yeah, take-home assignments, I usually try and keep them simple. Pitch a product, pick a product for X buyer, make it up, come to something distant, is come with something that exists already, and pitch me. Sometimes we'll say it depends upon the specifics of the role. Sometimes we'll ask for build the first call deck or build the pitch deck. Sometimes we'll say build the money slide, the messaging slide, but then give me the go-to-market launch. Like how would you launch this product? So kind of less of a customer pitch, but more of an internal pitch of here's the product and here's how we're going to launch it and here's why we're going to do this and here's how we're going to enable the field. It's less about, it's two things. Number one is like some of those hard skills. This is an opportunity to see some of the hard skills of, do you know what a go-to-market plan is and what, are you taking into consideration and like all the different aspects of enablement and the launch plan and pricing and packaging and objection handling. Can you build a messaging slide and a framework and a money slide and that type of thing? It's not about building it for a specific product. And I know my friends who are interviewing get really frustrated with take-home projects because they feel like they're doing homework for the company and they're just giving them ideas. For me, it's much less about pitching a specific product that I need pitched. I actually think that sometimes that's a lot harder to do because then the team evaluating it comes in with these preconceived notions or like, I have a lot more information than that person does. So sometimes it's better to like make something up or pick something outside of what the team is actually trying to launch. The other part of this take-home assignment, though, that I actually think is equally, if not more important, are we do prep sessions with the candidate. And that's an opportunity to see what it's actually like to manage somebody. When you come in, how prepared are you for this first meeting? How do you handle it? Do you come with ideas or do you come with like open-ended, like, tell me what you think? So seeing how a candidate prepares for the meeting, handles the call, do they take feedback? How has the presentation evolved or changed from the prep session to the presentation? Those are the elements that I don't know that people realize where they're being evaluated. And you're absolutely being evaluated on those sessions. And somebody who says, no, they don't need a prep session, huge red flag. Who think you can be perfect? If you don't want to take the opportunity to get some feedback, what are you going to be like to manage?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I talk a lot with folks one-on-one about that it's so confusing sometimes on product marketing interviews because it's not just the meat of what you're speaking to. It's really, how you're answering it. What is your thought process? What questions are you asking? It's just a very nuanced type of interview. It's very different from, I feel like, a lot of positions out there that you might interview for.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've done a different type of interview than product marketing. I don't even know what kind of presentations that you have to give. But I think I know presentations and the projects are controversial, but it's the best opportunity to see what it's like to actually work with the person. So they're pretty important, specifically in product marketing. And again, ideally, you're showcasing your storytelling skills throughout the interview, but here's your opportunity to actually pitch the product story. So again, that's the other thing that like obviously needs to come through. Are you captivating me as an audience? Or do I feel like you are telling a logical, coherent story? Yeah. So the presentation is a very valuable thing. I'll say what I'm not as picky about are, the slide design, the graphics, that type of thing, surprisingly, particularly because, again, I think that can be taught. It depends upon the role. Like if you're interviewing for a role where all you're doing is building presentations, then yes, your presentation needs to be beautiful. If you're interviewing for more of like a go-to-market role or enablement, I'm going to have a little bit more leeway on like your slide design.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be a relief for me. That's not a strong suit of mine. I'm definitely not a designer. But
go to Canva, one adapt.
See, that's why they're winning the market, right? For sure. Well, that was all the questions that I had prepared for today. Thank you so much, Jodi, for explaining your perspective and just giving us insight on what you look for. I'm sure it'll be really helpful for those on my channel that are trying to, ace their product marketing interviews, and a lot of them are trying to break into their first role. So thank you for your time today.
Of course, happy to help.